Welcome back. If you have been following along, we are continuing through the book Strength of a Woman, Why You Are Proverbs 31. We've been going chapter by chapter, and we are almost to the end. We only have 5 chapters left, so we're going to finish 3 today, and we'll finish 2 more next month. And we're actually getting to a part that I kind of enjoy because the tone of the whole passage is shifting a little bit here. Instead of just talking about all the activities that she does for her family and with her family and for her husband, we're shifting because now she's receiving some compliments and acknowledgement. And isn't that something that we as wives and moms and women kind of thrive on? We would like to have our work and our sacrifices acknowledged. So we're doing that a little bit today. We are reading Proverbs 31, 27, 28, and 29 today, and we're going to dive into those a little bit more. So, all right, you ready? This is Proverbs 31, 27. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. And so we've got a compliment being paid to this lady. If you're just jumping in here, we're going through the acrostic poem of Proverbs 31, which means every verse in Proverbs 31, 10 through 31 begins with a different letter of the alphabet, of the Hebrew alphabet. And so today we're going to look at the letter Zadi. It's actually got the image of a fish hook. So all Hebrew letters have some kind of pictographic image. And this fish hook actually shows up in the verse. When you understand the imagery of these letters, you begin to recognize them in the verses when you do a little bit of a word study. And so this word or this letter is a fish hook. And think about, when you go fishing, the hope is to hook something and pull it away. But this Proverbs 31 woman will not be hooked and will not be taken away. She actually leans in and watches the way of her household. So there's a good discussion there that we can have. The hook can represent captivation, like you've been pulled into captivity, or it could be a negative thing. Like if I'm captivated by something, it's got my full attention. That could be good or bad. So we're going to explore this a little bit more. So the word that begins Proverbs 31 is actually the word tishpa. And if you guys are following along in the book, this is on page 174, 175. There's a little bit of a discussion about this. And it opens with the Hebrew word tishpa. It means to lean forward, to peer, to spy, to keep watch. Tishpa is the same word used in Psalms 5:3 when David cries out to the Lord, and it says, in the morning I will order my prayers to you and I eagerly watch. The word in that case means like he's praying to God, but he's expecting a response and he's eagerly waiting for that response. On a few occasions in the NASB, Tishpa has been translated as watchman. And so we've got an idea of this woman acting as a watchman on the wall. Okay. And I'd mentioned in some of the other classes that Proverbs 31 has a military theme and also a theme about priests in the tabernacle and the temple. And so this is a great example of another word that is a nod to the military theme. So she is a watchman on the wall. And she's a little bit more than just being a household manager, because the verse kind of suggests that she looks to the way of her household. And so, we kind of think of that like, oh, she's, keeping her household busy. But actually, she's a watchman on the wall. So I'm curious, have you guys ever had a wayward prodigal child? Or a wayward family member, right? A prodigal family member. So the person in this story or in this chapter, every chapter I put a story of a real person kind of struggling with some things and how she models this particular letter. So the person I talked about in this was Tara, and she had a prodigal son who got deep, deep, deep into drugs just after a series of, sad events in her family. His response was to turn to drugs for comfort and to ease the pain. And he definitely fell away from the faith that she had implanted into him. And she acted as a watchman on the wall, right? Our job as the watchman is to, have your finger on the pulse of your family, if you will, to make sure activities and items that are coming into your home and think your cell phone, your children's cell phone, computer use, friends, all of that, you're keeping an eye on it and you're watching expectantly, waiting for that interaction to make sure that your kids and your family members are not hooked and pulled away. And so I think that's kind of an interesting play on words because, it's our job as parents and mamas to watch, right? To look in, to lean in, to watch. And it says she does not eat the bread of idleness. This word eat, I'll actually talk to you a little bit about it. It's on page 178 if you have your book. It is the word, and I'm going to look it up real quick, akil, A-K-A-L. And it doesn't mean she's simply, taste testing or just, casually enjoying a meal. It's sometimes actually translated as the word devour, burn up, wasted, and destroyed, right? So she is not devouring and eating up and taking in this idle life. And if you think about what does it mean to be idle, I kind of put a definition in there. The strong woman will not be hooked and devour wasteful or destructive bread. Okay, idleness is the avoidance of an activity or the avoidance of exertion. One commentary elaborates that the bread of idleness is a false pleasure of a lazy person. And this is something that the strong woman of Proverbs 31 does not partake, right? She knows as a watchman on the wall, if she's idle, then that's the exact moment that the enemy is going to hit, right? Satan doesn't really attack those that are not walking in a faithful life, right? Because they're no threat to him. They're going to just kind of live the mundane. They're not sharing their faith with other people. They're not molding the next generation. They're just people that say, yes, I'm a Christian, or yes, I'm a believer, right? Satan is attacking those that are actively on the battlefield, right? The one that is actively trying to mold their family and trying to guide and lead, because that person is a threat, right? You're investing in the next generation, and so you're going to be the one that's the target, and so you're going to be the one that needs to keep an eye on the wall, act as a watchman on the wall, so that you can sound the alarm when the enemy is approaching. So I think I enjoy that because she's actually being acknowledged. Like we do this work. And in Proverbs 31, imagine the Lord standing over you and saying, you have successfully acted as the watchman on the wall. So, Tara has a great story of what she did to sound the alarm in her family. And, I hope and pray that's never a situation that we find ourselves in. But I have a daughter who she's not on drugs, but she's not actively walking a faith-filled life. She'll say, yes, I believe in Yeshua, and yes, I believe in his return and his rapture, in the rapture. But um, you know, she's not a strong, active Christian. So I gotta sound the alarm in her life and kind of lead and direct her and make suggestions so that she doesn't get hooked and taken further into captivity. Okay, the next verse is Proverbs 31:28, and it is, her children rise up and bless her, call her blessed. And this is a verse that I see on artwork all the time. We always have this in our home. The children rise up and call her blessed. And her husband also, he praises her by saying, and then dot, 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 we'll get into the next line. But this verse starts with the letter Kuf. Excuse me. And Kuf holds the imagery of the back of the head or the neck, okay? And it actually symbolizes, if you look at the shape of the letter, it kind of has a little dome or a curve because we're curving over the back of our head. And it symbolizes what is to come, right? Because it's coming from behind us. So, what is to come? And it also symbolizes a cycle, right? Because think about how the sun will rise and then do the circuit of the sky, a dome over a circuit of the sky. And it's a full cycle, right? As it continues around the cycle of the earth. So Proverbs 31 is, and also Kuf holds, like I said, the back of the neck. So this Proverbs 31 woman is the neck of her family. And think about how she's the neck between God and her family. She's the connecting point between God and her family. So, she has the knowledge and the understanding and the commitment to follow God. And she's the connection now to minister to her family. So I think that's an interesting one. And she's called blessed. This also continues in that new section of the poem where honor is being proclaimed over this woman, right? And it begins with the word that rise up, husbands rise up. And think about, almost we can almost say it's back in the olden days now when a woman entered the room or when she sat at a table, men would rise, right? Men would stand up and acknowledge that she's coming into the room or that she's joining them or leaving the table. They would stand up. And so that's kind of the same connotation of this word. It gives them the same idea. But the word praise that she receives is a little different, and I love it. It's on page 185. I want to read this to you. It's the word. Let's see if I can find it right here. Okay, let me read this to you. The word translated as husband in this verse is Baal. Okay, and if you know anything about Bible study, Baal is usually a master or a lord, as an owner, and it doesn't have a really good connotation. But before we get, really worked up about this word, think about how it's used. We know that this person has paid a bride price for, she's worth more than rubies. He has paid that price for her. And that was a very, very, very common practice in the ancient Near East, right? To pay the bride price to obtain a wife. Even Isaac did that, for his wives, Rebecca and Leah. And so same connotation here, same usage here. But the word that this person is, the praise that he's singing over here is the word Hallel. And that should remind you of hallelujah. And if you know anything about the ancient Near East, you might have heard the sound, like la la la, where they roll their tongue. What they're doing is they're using that word halal and singing a praise, and they're boasting. It implies that this man is boasting about his wife, almost like a madman. He's crazy about her. So although he has paid a price, and this may have been an arranged marriage, he has a love for her and an acknowledgement of her that she is of high value, and he's willing to boast about her. Ladies, isn't that something we wish that our husbands would boast about? But what do we do if we're not married, or we're divorced, or we're single, or we're widowed, right? Well, don't forget that the Bible uses this word several times to indicate praise that is offered to the Lord. To ascribe this type of praise to a woman in the ancient Near East was very rare. And the use of Baal or master in this context is easier to remember when we remember Jesus, Yeshua, as our Lord and Master. So this is a song, I've mentioned that before. This is a heroic hymn that our Father sings over us. He's crazy about us. He's so excited and so glad to sing our praises. We offer those hallelujahs to our Father, but through Proverbs 31, he's acknowledging that we deserve the hallelujahs as well. He's singing Hallel over us, right? He is standing up like a gentleman, and he's, we're in his presence. He's willing to stand up like a gentleman and sing those praises over us. So I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful picture. And it's nice to know that perhaps I am worthy of this praise. So the person in this story is actually Julie, my friend Julie. And when I interviewed her, she was, talking about it and saying, she had a first marriage that really wasn't good. He was very abusive. And she met him in church, right? So this should have been a great match. But actually, she said as soon as her wedding night, she knew that this was a bad decision to marry him. And eventually he actually used his faith and knowledge of the Bible to bring her down even more. He would pull out Proverbs 31 and he would say, you know, you're never going to be this woman. Look at this woman does this. This woman, you're never going to be her. You're not even worthy to be sung over, correct? Well, she divorced him. She made some bad decisions in life after her divorce, but she eventually married somebody. And as they were dating, she got to a point where she's like, look, I think we're getting serious. And so I need to share a little bit of my past so you understand the kind of woman you're getting, right? This is the trouble you're getting yourself into, is kind of how she presented herself. And she shared some of her story with her. And he took out a piece of paper and he said, I've been looking, he had never been married. And he said, I've been looking for a wife. And, with my understanding of the Bible, I believe that I should be looking for a particular kind of wife. And this is the kind of woman I'm looking for. And I see these qualities in you. And as you have fulfilled these qualities on this list, I've highlighted them. And this is who I think you are. And he laid down that list, and it was the Proverbs 31 passage highlighted. It had been highlighted during the time that they were dating. Guys, I can't make this up. And the fact that she's included in my book, I mean, that's totally a God thing. So she was redeemed, right? He redeemed her. He stood up and he blessed her with this. And I wanted you to understand this. On page 186, I've got a little bit. This is what I want you to think about. Pause for a second. Imagine Jesus, Yeshua, standing over you, holding the Proverbs 31 passage. He isn't checking off a list or scratching off unobtainable qualities. He's highlighting words that describe you. He paid our bride price, and he sings over us just like the husband here in Proverbs 31:28. And so I want that to be a blessing to you. Whether you're married, single, divorced, widowed, whatever it is, we have a bridegroom who loves us dearly. And he's not scratching off a list, but he has highlighted things in the qualities that he sees in you. So I hope that that is a blessing to you. Okay, well, we're down to the last letter today. It's the letter Resh, and it's Proverbs 31:29, which it says, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. And I love this verse. My mom actually stitched me a cross stitch with these words over it. Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. So this verse continues the praise because it said her husband praises her, saying. So this is the compliment that the husband is saying. Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. So it's a continuation. The word nobly or noble, many women are noble, but you excel them all, is a repeat of a word that we saw way back in Proverbs 31. A noble woman who can find, and it's the word chayil in Hebrew. And as I mentioned before, Proverbs 31 is an acrostic poem. It's a heroic hymn. It is also a chiastic, which means the first verse relates to the bottom verses, right? So things parallel each other. So this is the verse that would parallel the first. This is the chunk, the verse that would parallel the first. And so we've got the same words, right? They're parallel because they're using the same words. And so what's happening is, and if you think of Resh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you what Resh meant. Resh means chief, like the chief of a tribe, or the first place, or prince, right? The first. And so what's happening here is, with the husband standing up and saying, many women are noble, we're going back to the first, right? We're acknowledging what was said first about her. He's saying it again, like bookends, right? This is the praise of her. But also, many women have done nobly, you excel them all. That word excel I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. It's got the root of Allah. It's the root word Allah, which comes from Ola, right? We've got to get down to the very basic of that root. And Ola is a sacrifice. Okay. So this is on page 93, if you've got the book. Let me get to it real quick. Okay. And it is Allah shares the Hebrew root with the word Olah, which also means to go up or to ascend. But Olah relates to a burnt offering and sacrifices that are associated with the way in which the smoke from the sacrifices ascended as a fragrance before God. This offering differs from others. Where others' offers may have been portioned to the priests, this burnt offering was entirely consumed. It goes up in flames on the altar to God in worship. This gives us a clue to some wordplay with the link to sacrifices. Not only is the Proverbs 31 woman strong, Chayil, and a servant, which is like the oxen at the beginning. We talked about how she's considered like a yoked oxen with Olive, the very first verse, but it also acknowledges the sacrifices that she makes. Isn't acknowledgement, just a little bit of acknowledgement, what we all desire as wives and moms? I'm willing to sacrifice for my family. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm doing it whether or not anybody pauses to acknowledge it, correct? But when my children or my husband actually says, I recognize the work that you do, or I recognize that sacrifice that you've made, that's high praise indeed. Definitely high praise indeed. It's interesting. I have an adult daughter who now has her own child, and she is now beginning to make decisions in her life that are sacrificing hopes and dreams and jobs and things that she wants, right? She's a teacher, and she has decided to leave a certain school and go to another school so that her son could attend that school, right? She wants to put him in a private school, a Christian school, but she could never afford the tuition. But by getting a job there, she has a break on tuition, she can afford it. And so she's acknowledging, like, oh, I'm changing trajectories in my life, and I'm changing careers, and I'm changing things that are important to me to make that sacrifice for my child, right? So if he's going to go to that school for the next 12 years, she's got to work there for a really long time. It's a sacrifice. And he may never acknowledge that. Maybe when he graduates, or maybe if he decides to go to college, he'll understand the opportunity for the education that he got. But it's not now, not as a kindergartner, right? But we do other sacrifices, right? We give up jobs we like. We maybe decide to stay home. That may not be a sacrifice for some of us. Or getting a job. Maybe we want to be stay-at-home moms with our children, but financially we have to go to work. And so that can be a sacrifice too. My husband is not Torah observant, and he doesn't follow the Hebrew thinking. He's just very steeped in traditional Christian church. And so my sacrifice is I still go to church with him on Sunday. It's not a huge sacrifice, like it's not a terrible thing, but I would like to worship in a different manner. And so I have to do that on my own. But I still go to church with him so that he can have the fellowship and the teachings that he wants. So we all have a sacrifice. However, our bridegroom acknowledges it. He stands up and he reads this song over us, and he acknowledges the strength that we have as we draw from his strength as well. So I wanted to just kind of leave you with the thought, how can this passage apply to the non-traditional marriage or the non-traditional family structure? And if the idea is first or chief, then the idea is to put God first, right? The work that we do is to honor our Father in heaven. And so that should be the first priority before we even wrestle or struggle with what kind of sacrifice this is. Like, we should be wanting to make a sacrifice for our Father and then for our families as well. And so the story that I did here was my friend Jen, who her husband was in the military and he returned from the war very much a broken man. And he definitely had physical injuries and PTSD. And he was not the same man that left when he went to war. And so she became the strength of her family, and she had to become the leader of her family while he healed. And the dynamics is definitely much improved, but for a very, very long time, she carried the family. She was the financial support. She did all of the medical insurance issues. She sought services for him. She did things to protect him physically because he was not in a position to do so for himself. And so their roles were really diverse, changed. And so when you've been raised all your life that your husband is the strength and he's the leader of your family, but he's not, how do we handle that? Well, it's done by putting our bridegroom first, making him the chief priority in the family, surrendering and making the sacrifices to him first so that they'll be acknowledged and successful and entirely consumed like a fragrant offering before him. So I hope that gives you a little bit of encouragement as well. Um, if you're not in a traditional marriage or family, there is still sacrifices that are acknowledged, and your sacrifice that is being made for your family members are received before our Father like a fragrant offering. So I hope that's a blessing to you. We have two more to go. We're going to go over Shin, which is Proverbs 31:30, and then the very last letter of the alphabet, Tav, which is 31:31 for Proverbs 31 woman. So we've got two more, and I'll see you guys next month. I hope you guys have been enjoying this. Again, it's Strength of a Woman, Why You Are Proverbs 31. I hope it's a surprise to you that this is unlike any other Proverbs 31 book that you have read. And I hope that it's been an encouragement to you, because it's not a list. It's not this unobtainable, I can never be this woman. This is how God already sees you. He already sees you this way, and he's simply singing a heroic hymn over you. So blessings.